Hi, I'm Michael Fry, President and CEO at Deepwater Subsea. I want to do a little presentation here for a minute on a topic that keeps coming up pretty much internationally, and that is procedural discipline, procedural drift, and people's competency and understanding of what it is they're supposed to do on the job. I just got back from Brazil doing some competency assessments and training for one of the drilling contractors. Had an amazing opportunity to train the guys, and really when you're out there interacting with them and really talking about some of the challenges that they face, this topic keeps coming up. So what I want to do is just run through a very quick 4-slide presentation and just give you something to think about, and think about when it comes to your employees, your peers, your subordinates, and where you're actually at when it comes to level of competency and the use of procedures in your day-to-day world. So take a look at this presentation. We're going to start off with the learning curve and actually how good are you at performing a task. So as we know when we first start off and we're not engaged at all, we're not practicing, we're not doing the actual task, we're not very good. And the more we practice, the better at it we get. And so it's a very simple graph, practice makes perfect. The same thing though is with performance time. So the first time you learn how to do something, it takes you a while to do it. And the more you practice, the better at it you get. And one of the things I like to say is, don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you don't get it wrong. Perfect practice makes perfect. And a lot of times what happens is when guys are coming up in their careers, they're always engaged, they're always doing things, they're asking questions, they're in the books, and they're trying to truly learn as quickly as possible. And that takes us into the next slide. So job performance versus years in a position. And what you get is this is a kind of a good overview of what someone's career looks like in any position, not oil and gas, doesn't matter where you're at. And you start off in rapid qualification. You're new in a position, you're learning, you're hungry, you have the desire to be the best, hopefully at the job that you're doing. And then you come into this proficiency development phase. And that is when you're doing the task over and over and over again. You've gotten through the trainee stage, you're now, it's kind of routine, doing your thing each and every day, Monday through Friday, just kind of doing your hustle. Then what happens is you get to peak performance. You are doing the best that you can do. And unfortunately, you hear this term a lot, which is, hey, this individual has peaked. And the reason they've peaked is what starts to happen is you get overconfident and your performance starts to decline. And the thing that's disappointing is you see it with pro athletes, you see it with executives, you see it with, pretty much anybody and everybody when they think that they're bigger than what they really are. What happens is they get away from training, they get away from getting in the books, they get away from trying to learn and develop, and they just start becoming complacent. They're overconfident, and that leads to their performance starting to decline. What I'm starting to see, and just to give you guys something to think about here for a minute, procedural discipline in the use of documentation. What happens is the ultimate goal is 100% usage 100% of the time. Now we know the reality of it is that's not going to happen. So one of the big challenges is as people go on in their career, if you look at the bottom, the level of competency, as we go up in competency, we're in a position, we're learning it, we're starting to get to the senior level of being a supervisor. Guess what? That starts to drop off. Our use of procedures happens less and less each and every day. I myself at one time felt guilty of this. And it's because, hey, I know what needs to be done. Now, I would use those procedures as a reference from time to time, but the reality is very rarely did I ever go and actually pull the book out and read step by step. What we're finding is when we're doing competency assessments and knowledge verification and post-accident or incident investigations, this is where it's starting to happen. When the drift starts to take place, the level of incidents and accidents start to increase. Why? Because we're getting away from the way it's supposed to be done. And unfortunately, as our level of competency goes up, people's level of knowledge, and let me rephrase that, as people's competency goes up, the assumption of, hey, I know what needs to be done becomes greater and greater. And unfortunately, in today's world, that's not something we can have. And with the new Betsy rules and verification of competency and the mechanical integrity assessments that are going to be done through the BAVOs, I think it's very important for people to understand is that you need to get back to the fundamentals. You need to get back to getting in the books. You need to understand what's in rules and regulations. Part of our subsea management class, we teach the BSEE rules, API documentation, really getting back to the fundamentals or what guys are supposed to do on the job. Unfortunately, a lot of guys don't know that. They might be great subsea guys. They might be great mechanics. They might be great whatever the position is. But when you truly get down to the documentation and do you know what's in the print, that answer is no. Now, they might be getting 80% of it right, but what about the 20% that they're missing? What about make sure you put this in your notes in your PM system? There's a lot of stuff that's getting missed, and unfortunately, when it's found out is during an assessment or during an audit. If we're going to take this industry to another level, we have to do it today. And what I mean by that is we know what BSEE's asking for. We know what needs to be done. Now it just comes down to the execution. And unfortunately, a lot of guys don't find out that they're not doing their job until something takes place or until an audit happens. They might think they're doing their job because this is the way it's always been, but the reality is that they're not. Things are getting missed. So I want to shoot this video real quick, throw something out to you, something to think about. Procedural discipline, the use of it, competency, all of it all ties back in together. The higher you go in competency, the less you use procedures. The less you use procedures, the more incidents and accidents start to take place. And then when an investigation happens, what do we find? We find that you're not following documentation. So guys, if you're in the field, get back into the books, understand what's in there. OEMs, people are making changes. And if you're not following these changes, you're opening yourself up to potential risk and potentially to accidents and incidents. And obviously that's the last thing we want to happen. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop me an email at any time at mike@deepwatersubsea.com. If you're a company who is looking to have competency assessments and verification done, please feel free to drop me an email. Our proven technique that we use from the military of qualification assessments and incident investigations, I personally believe is unlike anything else in the industry because it's a proven technique that's worked for generations. Again, feel free to drop me an email at mike@deepwatersubsea.com and I'd be happy to tell you more about it.